everyone. Welcome to another episode of High Energy Girl. And today's awesome guest is here for a second part. Her name is Adele Spraggon, and she is an award-winning author. She is all about changing your mind patterns so that you can get rid of a lot of habits and change your behavior, change your thoughts, change your feelings, everything. And last time we talked really about all her repatterning programming, but today we're talking about the difference between right brain, left brain, and everything in between. So let's go and say hello to Adele. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhige, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. Give a woman a fish, feed her for a day. Teach a woman to fish, feed her for a lifetime. Teach a woman to teach a woman to fish, end world hunger. Have you ever wanted to help people improve their health journey? Have you thought about coaching people with a keto lifestyle? Would you like to become an integrative health coach? Well, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, or IIN as we call it, is the largest nutrition school in the country. And in 2011, I graduated from their program and became a health coach. It was completely awesome. We learned over 100 different dietary theories and talk about craziness and confusion. My wish for you is that we can lock arms and create a tribe of health coaches all around the country, all around the world to spread the keto message. If this resonates with you and you would like to look into this option deeper, please go to my blog at highenergygirl.com and click on the link to the right of the homepage. Here you can grab the curriculum guide and see if it inspires you. Since I care so much about my listeners, I negotiated the very best tuition rate for you at IIN. Either you can contact them directly and give them my name, or I will introduce you to a counselor so you can decide if this is a good fit for you and your career goals. Let me know how I can support you in this coaching career opportunity. Hey Adele, thank you so much for coming back to finish our conversation.
You're so welcome, Tracy. Happy to be here.
You are such a doll. So for the listeners that didn't hear our first show, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and then kind of preface what we're going to talk about today, and then they can go back and listen to part one, and we'll put a link in the notes for that as well.
They may have to in order for part two to make sense. So that's probably not a bad idea.
Good.
So my name is Adele Spraggon. I'm a behavioral change expert. I work with people's behaviors and I help them to change their underlying brain patterns so as to take brand new actions, brand new behaviors, and to think and feel differently. And that can go for anything: procrastination, avoidance, relationship issues, conflicts, anything that is getting in the way of somebody's success. There's an underlying brain pattern that is causing the unworkable action.
And when you said that, I just caught myself what it is with me. Avoidance, right? Does that sound about right?
There you go. Yes, I had a great pattern for avoiding. Mine was I actually quit. I would just turn tail and run every time. So once I figured out it was a brain pattern and how to change it, you literally step out of one identity into another. I just no longer even think about quitting anymore. It doesn't enter my mind.
That is cool. So what we didn't get to talk about is just the different pieces of the brain, the right, the left, I don't know, the front, the back. I just look at it as like a big walnut. So will you go ahead and talk about the importance of understanding the different parts of the brain and what they actually do to take care of us?
Yeah, I mean, really the primary difference that I think we should look at is the difference between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere of the brain. So most people know that our brain is divided. It is severed right down the middle. And what connects it is something called the corpus callosum. That's just a fancy name that means a band of tissue that allows information to flow between those two hemispheres. So the question that science has asked for ages is why? Why have two brains? Why not just have one? What is going on inside the brain? And I should say it's not just the human brain. Animal brains are also have two brains that are also severed down the center. So when we think about it, Tracy, the interesting thing about, I should back up a minute. So throughout history, science has determined different reasons why we have two brain hemispheres. They first thought, okay, the right hemisphere is just a duplicate of the left hemisphere. It's a spare part. So if we need it, it's there. Most of the time we don't need it. So, right, that was the first thing that they came up with. And then they thought, well, hang on a minute, it does seem to be doing something different. Like when people have brain damage in one hemisphere, there's definitely things that they're lacking or doing differently. So what is it? So the next thing they determined is, okay, maybe it's functional. And so we are still left with very much with this theory. Functional being, the right hemisphere is all about creativity and imagination. The left hemisphere is all about analytics, linear thinking, logic, all of that stuff. Okay, not true. Both hemispheres are needed for functional things like creativity, language, logic. Both of the hemispheres are coming into play. So what is the latest theory, which seems to me to be the most exciting and the one that really makes a difference when we learn how to work with our underlying brain patterns? So there's two different things, Tracy, that your brain needs to be doing right now at exactly the same time. One thing is you need to concentrate closely on what I'm saying. You need to understand my words. And in order to do that, you have to take stuff that you've learned from your past and use it to understand the present moment. Correct? At the same time, you also have to filter out a lot of the useless information that is all around you in the room, the changing in temperature, the shadows, the little noises like the fridge, the traffic outdoors, right? You need to just block all of that out in order to concentrate. Great. At the same time, though, there might be danger or opportunity in the other room. Something might happen that you need to be aware of. So you also need this broad, open, sustained awareness of everything in your space. Now, these are mutually incompatible tasks. One is to narrowly focus and cut off from the environment. The other is to keep this broad, open, sustained awareness of your environment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How does nature do this? Well, she does it very brilliantly, in my opinion. She just severs the brain in two. She says, okay, right hemisphere, you be aware of everything. Left hemisphere, you be responsible for focusing in and cutting off what doesn't need to be understood or acknowledged in the space. Got it?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
interesting.
Great. So what does that tell us about our brain then? Well, the first thing that we know is that the right hemisphere is always connected to now. It is always in the immediate space, right? It's keeping a broad, open, sustained awareness of everything that is occurring here, presently, in this moment. The left hemisphere, on the other hand, is using information that you already learned from your past and pulling it into the present moment. So I like to say our left hemisphere doesn't really like the present moment. It much prefers to be in the past or in the future. Right? It likes to pull that information from the past, overlay what's happening here with information from that past, and imagine a different future and project out into the future. Okay, that's your left hemisphere doing that. So our left hemisphere likes to time travel, just to put it simply. I'm using that as a metaphor, where the right hemisphere is always present, always on board. What's going on in today's mixed up world? Why are we in such a mess, right? Because we are. Does everybody, can we just all admit right here that something's going on in our world today, which is a little wonky? Most people are stressed, anxious, lacking in happiness. You're even the project that you're working on, it shows how many deep issues there are on this planet, right? How the billionaires of the planet are hogging all the money while the rest of the people, or some of the people, are starving. I mean, let's just admit for a moment that something has gone out of whack in our humanity. What is that? Simply put, our left hemisphere has become the dominant hemisphere. Ideally, how is your brain supposed to work? Ideally, what's supposed to happen is the right hemisphere drinks in everything that is occurring in your current environment. And it is supposed to pass that information over to the left, where the left interprets it based on what you've learned in your past. Okay? That's still happening. The right's still drinking and it's still passing that information over to the left. But the left now is supposed to bring its interpretation back to the right hemisphere, where context is provided, the context of the current situation we're in. And that's what no longer is happening freely. The right hemisphere is trying to go it alone, and it's interpreting through itself. And that is creating a lot of problems because we've lost our connection to the whole, to the bigger picture, which is what the right hemisphere is all about. So I'm going to pause and let Tracy ask some questions because you may have some at this point.
Oh, of course. So why? Why did that mix up or that state of confusion get created?
Great question. Two reasons. Over the course of evolution, the corpus callosum has been thickening because the brain has been growing bigger, but the corpus callosum isn't keeping up. So there's less opportunity for the brain hemispheres to communicate. That's one reason, but that's a very small reason for why it is happening today. What's really happening is we have way over-educated the left hemisphere of our brain. We have totally prioritized what the left hemisphere is doing, and we've undervalued and under-prioritized what the right hemisphere is doing. And we need to get this brain of ours back into balance. I believe the future now is about whole brain being, whole brain thinking, whole brain opportunity, where we learn to use both hemispheres simultaneously and equally. And when we do that, all of the problems on the planet will melt away.
Again, okay, that's a big claim, lady.
That's a huge claim. It's a huge claim. And if I hadn't worked, I've been doing what I do now for 10 years. And if I hadn't seen it in action, I would never be making this claim. But I have worked with so many thousands of people. And when they learn how to use this tool, their stress comes down, their conflicts come down. Not just internally in themselves, but conflicts in their relationships, conflicts in their workplaces, conflicts between them and their clients, conflicts in their extended families. I mean, everything just comes down because the right hemisphere is all about that big picture. And it's able to say, okay, that's not personal. That's nothing that you have to worry about. Where the left hemisphere is all about you. And pulling from your past, right? That information that you learned from your past. And so the left hemisphere, yeah, it's scared. It's trying to do a job that it's not designed to do. And it has created a lot of conflict.
So does that have to do with like the current economy, or does it have to do with something else? I mean, I'm just trying to get some context here.
Yeah. So, one way to look at all the issues in the world is to look at them as being socially created issues, right? Economics, society, race, government, politics. That is one way to look at all the problems on the planet. Absolutely. And all of those can be addressed. But all of them, when we think about it, originate in our brain. Let me just explain what I just said. This brain of ours is actually locked inside a dark, silent room inside a skull. And it actually doesn't have any access to the outside world. So everything that we know about ourselves and about the planet and about each other is given by a brain pattern that we have created in our brain. Now, when we come to own issues like that, own it at that level, okay, wait a minute. Yes, there is a problem out there. But we, humanity, are they at the center of that problem? Now we get to say, okay, is that problem something that I can address by changing my own brain pattern rather than trying to change the situation as if it lives out here in the world? And that's the benefit of working with your patterns. We become fully empowered. When I work with couples, for example, who are in deep conflict, they want to go for a divorce, they've had it with each other. And then I introduce them to this tool and I said, come on, let's just look at the patterns that are occurring and let's just gently remove those patterns from inside your brain. And boom, they become like newlyweds again. It's remarkable to watch. It's like everything about those conflicts just melts. Why is that? Because our brain is always interpreting what is going on in the outside world.
Wow. Gosh, if you were able to, I mean, with the divorce rate, how high it is and everything, oh my gosh, if you could train couples, if we could put families back together, I mean, that alone would be massive for the ripple effect from divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 10. My dad was married 5 times.
Yeah.
But, starting at that core, just imagine bringing families back together. That's beautiful, Adele.
Yeah. And if I take in a couple, like I always interview them first just to make sure that I can support them. But as soon as I agree to work with a couple, I guarantee the results. Now think about it. I'm the only person who does couple coaching out there who can actually guarantee that they will stay together. The reason I can guarantee that is because it's all patterns. And as long as they are willing to work with those patterns, those conflicts are going to come down. Absolutely.
Oh, that's lovely. That is lovely. I love that idea. I'm happily married 32 years, but
me too.
Oh, good.
Yeah. August 2-4. What's your date?
February 17th.
Oh, there you go.
So were you married in 89?
91.
Okay. I was married in 1990. So
I'm 32 years this August. You've just had your 32nd.
So let me ask you this. So where does like your subconscious or unconscious fit into this? And I'm asking this because I've heard that they're 2 different things. I always thought they were the same. And I would love to hear some explanation about that too.
So I have a different take on the brain than most psychiatrists, psychologists, and most of the ways that we're taught to see the brain. I am not saying that a subconscious doesn't exist. Please don't misunderstand me. But when we think about the brain, what I like to say is think about your brain as an iceberg. And at the top of the water are all of your actions, all of your behaviors, all of your beliefs, those ones that are taken subconsciously, those ones that you're conscious of, those ones that your body is just doing on your behalf. Like much of what we do is unconscious. If we place all of that at the top of the water, then we can put all of our brain patterns under the water. Everything that your body does, everything your brain does, every belief you hold, every thought you have, has an underlying brain pattern. And our only question is, does it work or doesn't it work? One of the things that people often say to me is, I have a self-sabotaging pattern. And I like to say, no, you don't. Every part of your being is trying its best to support you. The only thing that appears to be self-sabotaging to us is when those actions, behaviors, beliefs don't work to take us in the direction that we would like to go in, right? So we feel like we're self-sabotaging, but what's actually happening is you just have a brain pattern that is taking an action that appears to you to be self-sabotaging. If we can just deal with it like that, all of that trying to understand something, like, why do I do that? What's wrong with me? All of that just melts away. It's like there's nothing wrong with you. You just have a pattern in your brain that's not taking an action that you need to take. We're just going to remove it.
I love that. And I love how it takes the hammer out of your hand, that you're not beating yourself up, feeling bad about yourself. but it's just, I love how you said, it's just a pattern that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That is
so
cool.
What is the benefit of reconnecting? And I say reconnecting, and I'm going to explain what I just said by that, but reestablishing communication to our right hemisphere. What's the benefit? A lot of people meditate. A lot of people are trying to be present, trying to be in this moment, trying to be relaxed. That is what the right hemisphere provides us with. When we're able to connect to the right hemisphere, we are in the now. We are here present. And I spent, oh gosh, Tracy, I started meditating when I was 24 years old, sitting on the cushion, determined to get enlightened. I was going to be in the now all the time. And when I realized, oh, wait a minute, all I have to do is repattern my brain, and I'm there. I'm exactly where I want to be in this beautiful space called now, able to be aware of the bigger picture, able to bring context to all of my situations. Nothing feels personal. That is what we've all been striving to get to. And it's not a matter of striving to get there. It's built right into our brain. That spiritual center, it is our right hemisphere. I should say, though, our right hemisphere is silent. It doesn't speak language. The language center of our brain is in the left hemisphere. And so that's why it feels so spiritual, so external to us. It's because the left hemisphere is doing its best to translate what the right hemisphere is saying. But frankly, it has a limited ability to do that. So again, I'm going to pause and let you ask questions.
Oh, you're so funny. I guess if you were to tell the listeners a few things on how to improve that communication between the right and the left, so we can bring it back to where you said it was before it got so disrupted.
Yeah. Okay. So what you need to know is as a baby, you're born primarily using your whole brain. Well, you're born using your whole brain. It's our overeducation which overemphasizes the left hemisphere of the brain. Okay, so that connection was there at birth. Children, if you watch children, notice how forgiving they are. Notice how in the moment they are. When they play, they're playing like they're there, right? They have a fight, and a minute later they're hugging and everything's gone. All right. The children demonstrate whole brain being. Adults don't. We've lost that connection. So the more we educate, the more we lose. How do we get it back? We need a method of subtraction, not addition. You can't strive to be in the right hemisphere. What you can do is remove left hemisphere's patterning, and then you will immediately tap to the right and gain access, strengthen that communication. So what I teach is a 4-step technique. It's actually using both hemispheres of the brain. It starts with identifying the pattern itself, which is the left brain. And it uses left brain language, left brain focusing in to do that. So let me just gently walk your listener through what I just said. The pattern is an intertwined physical sensation, emotion, thought. When you're taking an action that doesn't work for you, or when you're procrastinating, avoiding, quitting, your job is not to try to strive to do the thing that you're trying not to do. Your job instead is to ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where do I feel that? And what is one thought that goes through my mind? Okay. So Tracy beautifully said, oh, I see what my pattern is. I avoid. So Tracy, we could identify that for you by saying, okay, what are you avoiding? So it might be, I avoid
homework.
Homework. Brilliant. I avoid homework. Okay. So when you think I have to do my homework, can you tell me what you feel in the body? Imagine going to do homework.
Like, I guess an angst, and this could stem back from college and having to do homework and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So there's anxiety. The thought is, oh, this goes back to college. And You say there's an angst. So is that occurring in the stomach, in the
Yeah.
heart, in the,
Yeah. It's
okay.
just like that. Ugh, I hate homework.
Oh, I don't want to. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. All right. So that's the pattern. That sensation, that emotion, that thought, that is all the pattern. That's an indication of a pattern that is going to stop you. Now, notice now how you're in the left brain world, you were taught, fix that, Tracy. There's something wrong. Just go do it. Just sit down, force yourself, set a timer, all of this manipulation that we try to do to get ourselves to do our homework. Forget it, way too much work. And frankly, it's not really supporting you. So what do we do instead? Well, instead, why don't we just own that as a pattern? I have a pattern that doesn't want to do my homework, and that pattern feels like this, right? Great. And I created that somewhere in my past, somewhere back there, I created that pattern. Now we can deconstruct it, remove it. Let's get rid of that pattern. Let's just tease that neural pathway apart in your brain, because your brain will rewire itself and it will create a brand new pattern. Now, at that point, let's just pretend for a moment, Tracy, if I could just hand you a magic wand, and I know it's not real, I'm sorry, but just imagine if you could just wave away that pattern that doesn't want to do its homework. What would you be doing?
If I waved away the pattern that doesn't want to do its homework,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It feels like a trick question.
It's not.
So you said I'd be doing? I'd be waving a magic wand.
If I could hand you a magic wand and you wave away the pattern that doesn't want to do its homework, so now boom, it's just gone.
Okay.
Wouldn't you just be doing your homework?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I guess I would,
Okay.
because that pattern would be gone.
And you wouldn't have to strive to do your homework. You'd just be doing your homework.
I just do it. Yeah.
You just do it, and it would feel effortless, right?
Right.
Free
Just
of
like
effort.
drinking my water.
Just or brushing your teeth, because yeah, you've already got a pattern that does homework, so you don't have to think about doing homework. You're just doing homework.
Okay, that makes sense.
That is the design of your brain. That is what our brain is supposed to do all the time. And it does when we allow the right hemisphere to bring the context, because why? Doing homework works. Not doing homework doesn't. Right? That's why.
Yeah, that's why I flunked history.
Yeah, exactly. Because to not do homework makes you feel bad.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I never thought it would be so easy to visualize it that way.
Yes. Yeah. We spend way too much time trying to manipulate ourselves and trying to force ourselves to do stuff that doesn't work. Trying to be in the now. I mean, let's just think about that for a moment. I'm going to strive to be present. How does that work? Right?
How does that work? Basically, what we're doing is we're getting rid of a pattern. But if we get rid of something, is there a gap that our subconscious would want to fill?
Yeah. So nature abhors a void, as we all know, right? It won't have a vacuum. It will always fill it. So as soon as we remove a brain pattern, and I mean, this is a metaphor. What I'm about to say is a metaphor, but it works. Okay. Just think about a neural pathway in your brain. Just think about neural pathways that are teased together and information flows down that neural pathway. We're just going to go in there and just gently tease that pathway apart. What is going to happen? Well, your brain won't allow these two ends to just sit there. It's going to immediately snap into new channels. Correct? Okay. Those new channels provide you a different way of being, a different opportunity, a different action. Whereas this one, the old one, is always going to take the same action or hold the same belief as it did before. Everybody got that?
Oh, so it's almost like if you break this apart, these ends are going to search for something else. But if it stays together, it's just always going to go boop, 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 like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And anytime that you've done something to take a different action, so it is because you have rewired the brain. So our brain is always trying to upgrade. It's always trying to do its best to deliver the most aligned action, behavior, belief for the situation you're in. But it also prefers the action that you took yesterday. Okay, so that to the brain feels safe. A new action, well, don't quite know if that might work or not. So would much prefer to rely on what you did yesterday than create a brand new action.
Okay.
But it is always trying its best to communicate to the right hemisphere where that now is going to deliver the optimal action for you. So hopefully this is all making sense. It's trying its best. So it's always trying to rewire, and oftentimes that happens spontaneously. We just want to make that systematic. We want to be able to use the brain's ability to create new brain channels in order to take us to our goals, in order to be peaceful and happy and connected and free of conflict. We're going to use it using a 4-step technique that forces the brain to rewire itself. That's all we're doing.
Wow. And what are those 4 steps again?
So it starts with identify. We're going to identify the pattern, physical sensation, emotion, thought. We're going to own it as a pattern. So we're going to flip the switch. It's not actually occurring in your situation. What you believe is given by a pattern in your brain. We're going to deconstruct or tease apart that pattern. And then we're going to create a new pattern, create a new pathway.
That works. So get rid of the one that doesn't work and create a new one that does work.
That does work. Exactly. And at that point, you're taking effortless action. That's how you know that you have a pattern that works. It's effortless.
And it makes you feel good.
Yeah, typically. I mean, a pattern that, what is suffering? Suffering is the result of the subconscious regions of your brain. If we want to talk about the subconscious, it's almost like it's knocking, going knock, knock, conscious mind. You're running an obsolete pattern. Remove that pattern, you'll stop suffering. Okay? So that's how I like to see suffering. The brain is always trying to get us to take an optimal action, which works for us and supports us. When we're suffering, it's because we've got an old pattern in there that is obsolete and that requires an upgrade.
You sound so smart when you talk about all this stuff. And then you're like, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess you're right. I have no idea.
Well, it should sound logical. Like when I speak, people often say, yeah, that makes total sense. And that's the way it needs to be. If something's complicated, it's probably not true. If something's simple, it probably is. And if you can look at it and go, okay, I may not understand fully what Adele's saying because it's all very new to me, right? That's probably how your brain is relating, listener. I might not be able to understand everything, but everything she's saying fits. It fits my experience and it fits my thinking. And yeah, so I'm willing to give it a try. That's all that I'm asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it totally makes sense. It's very simple, very logical. I would use different wording, like almost like a pattern that isn't working for you doesn't feel good, and a pattern that is working for you feels good. That's more my right brain, right? My more, I don't know, I call it an emotional brain that is all into like how it makes you feel.
Definitely. So the right hemisphere of your brain is deeply connected to your body. It is your source of embodiment, okay, is coming from your right hemisphere. So our right our body, I should say, let's go back to what I was saying initially about there's 2 things that your brain needs to do. Okay. One thing is drink in everything in its environment. The other thing is focus in on what I'm saying. Okay, so one is broad open sustained awareness, one is cut off and filtered awareness. Your body right now, right here, is always in communication with the world around you, with its environment. Okay, and your right hemisphere is deeply communicating with the body. They're almost one and the same. Okay, then it passes the information to the left, and the left hemisphere divides, separates, filters, cuts off, narrowly focuses in based on what's going on from your past, not based on what's going on right here, right now.
So what do you say about the people who say I'm more right-brained or more left-brained?
Definitely, we see left brain embodiment all the time. You know, people who are, well, throw out some billionaire names out there and you probably hit a left brainer.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking like I've always been taught that the left brains are the accountants and the right brains are the artists.
Not necessarily, because accounting can be extremely creative and problem solving and stuff like that. So it's not actually quite that black and white, like artists are right brain, accountants are left brain.
Okay.
It's more how we are being in the world. Okay. So somebody who is, the left brain separates and divides. The left brain creates what I call, or what Ian McGilchrist calls, a virtual map that sits on top of the flow of now. So let me just explain what I just said. Right now, the world is in motion, correct? And everything about this current moment is actually moving all the time. If you had to understand that world, you would have a very, very difficult time, because by the time you know it, it's already moved on. Tell me if I'm making sense, Tracy.
Yeah, because like a second ago was a second ago, so it's already gone.
That's right. So it's already gone. Exactly. So the left brain doesn't even attempt to understand the now. Instead, what it does is it takes that now from the right hemisphere and it divides it up and it makes it into things that can be known. And those things have a permanency. Okay. This is a cup. I'm holding up a cup. That has a permanency, but in the now it doesn't. In the now, this is fluid. It's moving. If I made sense.
Because you're moving it.
Because I'm moving it, because the temperature's changing, because the light is changing and affecting it differently. Because each time I go to use it, it has a different purpose. Sometimes I'll stick flowers in it. Sometimes I'll drink from it. Sometimes it's hot. Sometimes it's cold. Okay. So it doesn't have permanency. It depends on the context of the situation.
Okay. Got it.
Not. Okay, good. Okay. But in the left brain, this is permanent. This thing is known and can always be known. It's a cup. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, good. Okay, we're getting it. All right. So in that left hemisphere, there is division, conflict, right, wrong, up, down, black, white. Okay. We see people who embody that world. Very concrete, very exact, very knowing in what they are saying. Okay. Whereas people who are more right hemisphere, they're much more nuanced, they're much more open to understand, they're much more about relationship rather than about things. So that's why I said think of any billionaire. The billionaires are typically about money and about objects and about things, about being in this world and utilizing the world, which is a left hemisphere way of being. People who are right hemisphere are much more about relationships. They're much more, let me hear you, let me listen, they're more forgiving, they're more understanding, they're more interested in human nature and being in with each other and what goes on between us.
Which one are you?
I like to think I'm whole brain. Whole
brain.
Both. But I think to be honest with you, I think I'm probably more right brain.
I would think you're more right brain, but you're very, very smart. So that shows me, not that right brainers aren't smart, but you really get your craft. You get it. So what would you tell the listeners would be the next step if they're like, wow, I really want to do what she's saying. I really want to get that process so I can change some of my habits or patterns.
Well, definitely get my book. All of the 4 steps are in my book, and you can get it from a website called Shift 4 Steps, and I gift it. So all I ask is people pay for shipping. So if you really want to re-strengthen, and I said I would explain that so I'm going to come back to that. But if you want to re-strengthen the communication to the right hemisphere, that's the place to start. Okay. The other thing you can do is, if you're not a reader, some people aren't, just go on my website and access some free training that I have there, and it'll help understand this, and join us in the community. And I'm out to change the world, like I said initially. I know, Tracy, it sounds crazy, but I am. So,
hey, it's the crazy ones that get the stuff done. I mean, I think you know me enough that a lot of people, you can understand that a lot of people think I'm crazy, but
yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. And, I mean, I find that people who are pattern makers, those are people who apply the 4 steps, they get so much more done, because we don't have to fight ourselves anymore, and not avoid, not quit, not worry about what people will think and what's going to happen tomorrow. We're just in action all the time, like taking actions all the time. And those actions are optimal and effortless. And that's the way it should be. So, yeah. Okay. So let me explain that. I think I may have said this actually, but I might be repeating myself. As a child, you were born using your whole brain. So it's just a matter of strengthening the communication back. It's not like you've lost it. It's not something we have to gain. It's already there. It's under the left brain's patterning.
Is it like, I'm hearing some big significance between the ages of 7 and 8?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm reading a book called Anna, the Grandmother of Jesus, and it is beautiful. But I just got to the point that Jesus turned 8, and all of a sudden he is off to do some major training, and he's only 8. I'm thinking of 8-year-olds still being like these little kids, and he's doing some major stuff. And I've heard before, and I don't know if it was you that said this, but that a lot of our patterns are developed by the time we're 8. Is that right?
Yeah. Typically, when language starts, when we start to get language, that's when we develop the permanency of things. Okay. And that occurs around the age of 5. So before that, your brain is really, really building a lot of flipping patterns extremely quick. We're not born with any. So from the moment you enter this world, your brain has to store patterns fast. Okay, so there's a massive amount of creation up until the age of 8, 5 to 8, and then again in adolescence, massive amount of pattern creation. Okay, when we start to become sexual beings, it's again that huge bout of patterns.
Okay.
But it happens all the way through childhood. Then when we hit adulthood, it slows down a little bit. It doesn't mean that your brain doesn't still have plasticity. It does. It doesn't mean that you still aren't creating patterns. You are. It's just that the brain is now relying primarily on what you've learned in the past rather than creating brand new.
Okay, I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so the book can be found on your website, right?
Yep.
And what is that link again, Adele?
So go to shift4steps.com. So that's SHIFT 4 steps STEPS.com. And there you can get some free training, or you can get a copy of the book.
And you said join the community. Where do you have community?
Oh, so it's called the Pattern Maker Hub, and you can access that through my website. So adelespraggon.com. If you get the free training, or if you get the book, you'll be added to my newsletter, and you'll hear about the Pattern Maker Hub and what's available.
Okay. Are you on social media or Instagram or Facebook or
Facebook,
anywhere like that?
Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Which one do you prefer?
Facebook, I'm there a lot because there's a group in there. So if people want to join the Pattern Maker group, which is a private group, you're welcome in there as well. And I'll support you in repatterning in there.
Okay. I always ask people where their favorite is, because my favorite is something different. I mean, I think it's important for people to be able to find people where they spend the most time, right?
Yes, of course.
Like I'm never on Twitter, but if people follow me there, they're not going to see anything.
Yes. That's true. Yeah, I prefer LinkedIn or Facebook myself. Just Facebook because the group's there, and LinkedIn because I don't know, I tend to be a business person. So
yeah, no, that's a good place to find people. So Anyway, well, what would you like to leave the listener with? What message of importance in your heart would you like to leave them with?
I think what I'd like to leave us with today is that oftentimes people are really stressed and really worried about the future of this planet. And information about the whole brain is now arising. And I think it's arising for a reason. I'm not really a spiritual person, but I do see that throughout history, when the need arises, the teacher comes. And I think now this understanding of whole brain is arising for a purpose, and it's arising so that we can change the future of this planet. So whether you get the whole brain philosophy from me or from any of the other really amazing teachers out there, like Jill Bolte Taylor, Ian McGilchrist, Joe Dispenza, there's a lot of really great teachers who are looking at whole brain and what the effect of whole brain is. Please do, especially if you're worried about the future of this planet, especially if you're worried about, you have children and you're worried about what they're going to go through. Things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And jump on board the bus. You'll be happy you did.
Awesome. Yeah. And just have hope and faith that, we're stepping into a whole new territory that's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. It's a different arising that is occurring. So, yeah.
You're awesome, Adele. I just really, really enjoy you. And I just want to thank you so much for being patient with me and coming back on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Of course. Happy to be here.
Okay, that was a great little discussion. Adele is an amazing person with a passion for helping more and more people. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and you will check out her book called Pattern Makers. And you can find all the links on the show notes page at highenergygirl.com/show. Thank you so much for listening, and go out and make it a great day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion, and I could be wrong.